Whether you're in school or not, you're probably under a lot of pressure. Not just from all the studying and those piles of homework, but pressure from other kids. Pressure to have sex, or cheat, or maybe it's to smoke or take drugs. Of course, you know what they want you to do is bad, but at times you may feel like you're missing out if you don't join them. You're not alone. Since the world began, young people have been dealing with peer pressure. But it doesn't mean you have to give in. The Bible has some good advice. Exodus 23:2 tells us not to just follow after the crowd. In other words, don't do something just because everyone else is doing it. Instead, be your own person. How do you get the strength to stand up to peer pressure? Here are 4 steps that can help. First, keep on the lookout for moral dangers and identify any situations where you might be pressured to do something wrong. If you see trouble coming your way, don't walk right into it. Find another route and avoid the problem. The second step, stop and take the time to think. Think about the consequences before you give in to peer pressure. In Proverbs 14:15, the Bible says, "Smart people watch their step." So don't just jump in and do what others say. That may be hard to do if you're trying to fit in. But that's the time to use your imagination. How will I feel later if I give in? What might be the outcome? How might my actions affect others that care about me the most? Step 3, you need to plan ahead. Proverbs 24:5 says that a person who has knowledge increases his power. If you know exactly why you're saying no to something, why something is bad, it can give you the strength to say no. Now, the 4th step. Take action. No, you don't have to give your peers a lecture. Just say no, clearly and confidently. You may be surprised at their reaction. Each time you take a stand for what you know is right, you get stronger and stronger. And that makes it easier to resist the pressure the next time. You don't need to be rude, but you could give a reason why you wouldn't want to join in. And if they do keep pressuring you, just remember this. Giving into peer pressure is kind of like being turned into a puppet with your peers pulling the strings. You can't hide from peer pressure, but you can stand up to it. Remember to keep on the lookout. Think about the consequences. Plan ahead and take action. Facing up to peer pressure can be scary at times. But when you do, you show the decisions you make really are your own.
How you doing, guys? Peer pressure is something that every human on the face of the earth has gone through at one time or another, especially when you're very young. You remember when you're first going to school. And when you're a real young kid, you notice some kids are more popular than others. And those popular kids seem to attract most of the kids in school. And then you have those groups that pretty much stay to themselves. But what do? They try and fit in with the popular kids, which in all honesty doesn't work. I pretty much got over that when I was very young. I had my circle of friends, and we were hanging out with a group of people that were probably at the time more popular than others, and we realized we didn't even like them, So we pretty much went our own way. By the time I was in high school, I was pretty much marching to the beat of my own drum. And no one had a problem with that. Nobody ever tried to change my direction. When the majority of people would go this way, Vinny would go that way, just because he could. Now, for years after that, no one ever had a problem with that. Until decades later, when I started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, at the time, I didn't know anything about them. I knew nothing at all about them, actually, and I didn't realize just how much pressure they put on the individual members to conform. I pretty much spotted this right immediately when I started studying. And I started going to the Kingdom Hall right off the bat. And the first thing they went after was my physical appearance. And I had the facial hair. I had longer hair at the time, and they didn't like this bandana, but my thing was, what is this to you? I'm here for a Bible study. That's pretty much it. But the first thing they did was try and tweak you to their way of doing things. Like I said, the first thing is the appearance. The one thing that they didn't realize is the more of an issue they made out of my physical appearance, the longer I left it. I had one old dude in the congregation. He approached me before the meeting with a publication, showed me a picture in it, which was supposed to have been a worldly thug with facial hair, a bandana, and gauntlets. I looked at it, I knew what he was getting at. I'm like, yeah, nice picture. I went about my business. My Bible instructor was notorious for that. Now, you had to know my Bible instructor. This guy was a wannabe badass. For some odd reason, he latched hold of me. He wanted to emulate me secretively, but whatever it was he thought I represented, he wanted to emulate but felt very threatened by. So the first thing he tried to do was cut it down. He was very insulting in a lot of ways. Now, he went after the facial hair. Now, the first thing I didn't realize, Jehovah's Witnesses don't have beards. They could never come up with a logical reason as to why, but I eventually went that direction. Okay. But like I said, the more of an issue they made out of it, the longer it stayed that way. Well, after I compromised myself to start looking like one of them, and I still looked a whole lot better than they did, the pressure didn't stop. It was a constant pressure to conform to the way they do things. The first thing is outwards. Then there's that so-called new personality, which is nothing more than a watchtower mask. You start to have to act like them, using the same lingo they use, and then they pressure you into becoming an unbaptized publisher. And what's the next step after that? Pressure to be baptized. And although outwardly it doesn't look that way, yes, there's a lot of pressure from everybody in the congregation to get baptized. And the thing is, then I really realized that maybe you don't want to. I can imagine the pressure on the younger ones in the congregation is a whole lot worse. I don't know if any of you out there can verify that. Let me know in the comments section. Unfortunately, I spotted this too late. Now, there were a lot of things I noticed from the beginning that unfortunately I put on the back burner, which is what I should have been watching from the get-go. I noticed a constant conformity. The people at the Kingdom Hall, all the JWs and a lot of their studies, were nothing more than Jehovah bots. And what I mean when I say that, they were puppets on strings. Not only did they have to look a certain way, they had to act a certain way. There was pressure on them constantly to be at every meeting. There was pressure to go out in service. There was pressure to study. And no matter how much you gave them, it was never enough. Now, supposedly, this was all supposedly voluntary, which that was bullshit, because no, it was not, because it was constant pressure to give. And these people that were supposedly the happiest people on the planet, I'm sorry, you can look in somebody's eyes and tell if they're happy or not, and for the most part, these people were not. Because when you got them away from the hall and you start talking to them individually and they could breathe a sigh of relief, they were actually some very miserable people, but they'll be the first to tell you, oh no, I'm happier than I've ever been. Yes, and you're fine as long as you look a certain way, act like every one of them, basically marionettes, you're puppets, you're bots, no individuality whatsoever. You know, I always thought, what would really happen if the majority, if not every one of Jehovah's Witnesses stood up. Now, you can't tell me that many of them didn't see the same things I do. I couldn't confirm this if the people in my congregation were seeing the same thing I was or not, but judging from talking to many people in the XJW community, I wasn't alone in that department. So I always thought somebody else has to be seeing what I'm seeing. But what would happen if every one of Jehovah's Witnesses that has been under pressure from the org for their entire lives, or for several years, or for decades, doesn't matter how long, stood up and said, no more. No, I'm not going out in field service today. I need a day off. No, I'm not shunning my brother anymore. I'm not shunning my parents anymore. No, I'm not shunning my kids anymore. If every one of JWs said to the organization, we're not going for this anymore, what would the organization do? They would have no choice but to oblige it. What are they going to do? Disfellowship every one of you? Take your kingdom halls? Well, actually, they can do that now because JWs was stupid enough to send them the deeds of their kingdom halls. But obviously, since they're going to be swaying more towards an online religion than they are a religion, yes, they will be eventually selling your kingdom halls. And all of you Jehovah bots who've been defending the organization one day are going to look around and say, what have I done? This is the 700 Club, and no different. Think about that, JWs. Do you really like living like puppets on strings? No individuality? I mean, I put up with it for a long time, and it was almost 10 years ago that I finally said I had had enough. And I know there's a lot of people that are walking away from it. This is not a religion. It's control. It's compromise. It's total marionette city. Anyways, guys, that's all I wanted to bring to your attention. If anybody has any thoughts on that, leave your comments below. I'll be talking to you soon. You guys have a good day.